girl returns from death with a godly message from heaven. The harsh fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital emergency room cast stark shadows as doctors frantically worked over the lifeless body of 14-year-old Emma Thompson. Clear the defibrillator jolted her small frame, but the monitor continued its monotonous flat line. Dr. Richardson wiped his brow, glancing at the clock 6 minutes without a heartbeat. Through the chaos, Pastor David Thompson clutched his wife Sarah's trembling hand, her hospital gown a stark reminder of her own battle with terminal cancer. "Please, God," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "Not our baby girl. Not like this." In the corner, Mia Anderson sobbed quietly, still in her school uniform, the memory of Emma's last words haunting her. "I'll see you tomorrow. I promise," a promise that now hung by a thread as thin as the line on the heart monitor. 7 minutes, a nurse called out, her voice heavy with defeat. Dr. Richardson raised his hands, about to call it, when suddenly Emma's body arched off the table. Her eyes flew open, but they weren't seeing the emergency room, they were seeing something else entirely. Something that made her scream a name that would change everything. Diddy. The monitor erupted into a symphony of beeps as her heart thundered back to life. But as relief flooded the room, nobody noticed the shadow that crept across the wall, or the way the temperature plummeted for just a moment. Nobody except Emma, whose wide eyes now held a truth too terrible to comprehend, and a message that would shake the foundations of everything they believed. If you found value in this story about faith, truth, and redemption, please subscribe to support more powerful narratives that touch hearts and inspire change. Thank you for being here. St. Michael's Church stood as a modest beacon in the heart of Brooklyn, its weathered stone walls telling stories of countless prayers and quiet acts of kindness. Inside, Pastor David Thompson's office was more of a sanctuary for troubled souls than a workspace. Photos of smiling teenagers, many rescued from the streets, lined the walls alongside biblical verses carefully written in his wife Sarah's elegant handwriting. David Thompson wasn't what most people expected from a pastor. At 45, his salt and pepper hair and warm brown eyes spoke of wisdom beyond his years, but it was his ability to connect with the most hardened hearts that set him apart. He wore simple clothes, often slightly worn, choosing to channel the church's limited resources into the youth center and food bank rather than personal comfort. Sarah Thompson, despite battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer, remained the backbone of their ministry. Her gentle presence could still be felt in the church kitchen every Wednesday, supervising meal preparations for the homeless while seated in her wheelchair. The chemotherapy had taken her hair, but not her radiant smile or unwavering faith. "God doesn't give us more than we can handle," she would say, even on her worst days. The Thompsons lived in a small apartment above the church, their home always open to those in need. Their living room had become an unofficial counseling center, where troubled teens would pour out their hearts over Sarah's homemade cookies and David's terrible coffee. They never had much money. Pastor David's salary barely covered their basic needs and Sarah's mounting medical bills, but they were rich in what mattered most: faith, love, and the gratitude of countless lives they'd touched. Their reputation for helping troubled youth had caught the attention of Sean P. Diddy Combs years ago. The music mogul had approached Pastor David about partnering on a youth rehabilitation program, seemingly impressed by the pastor's success in reaching young people where others had failed. The partnership had started promisingly, with substantial funding and high-profile support that allowed them to expand their outreach programs significantly. Emma had grown up in this environment of service and sacrifice. She watched her father counsel gang members at midnight, her mother comfort grieving parents, and both of them give their last dollar to someone in greater need. Their example had shaped her into someone extraordinary, a teenager who spent her weekends helping at soup kitchens and tutoring underprivileged kids, all while maintaining straight A's and never complaining about their modest circumstances. Even now, with her mother's illness consuming their lives and resources, Emma remained strong. She took on extra responsibilities at the church, learned to cook her mother's recipes to keep the Wednesday meals going, and still found time to visit hospital wards, reading to sick children. Her father often found her late at night, kneeling by her bed in prayer, not for herself but for her mother's healing and for the troubled souls who came to their door. The family's faith was tested daily by Sarah's deteriorating condition and their financial struggles, but they met each challenge with grace and unwavering trust in God's plan. None of them could have imagined that their greatest test would come not from illness or poverty, but from the very partnership that had seemed like an answer to their prayers. The scandal that would soon engulf them was brewing beneath the surface, set to challenge not just their faith, but their very understanding of good and evil in this world. Every morning at Brooklyn Heights High School, Emma Thompson and Mia Anderson could be found in their usual spot under the old oak tree, sharing breakfast and whispering prayers before classes began. Mia, with her vibrant red hair and freckled optimism, had stuck by Emma through everything: the scandal, the whispers, and now her mother's illness. Their friendship was a rare constant in Emma's increasingly uncertain world. "You're doing that thing again," Mia would often say, catching Emma lost in thought. That thing was usually Emma scanning the cafeteria for students sitting alone, already planning how to include them in the church's youth programs. Despite being only 14, Emma carried herself with a maturity that drew others to her naturally. Her long brown hair was usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, her blue eyes carrying both the weight of her family's struggles and an unshakable hope. School itself was a daily exercise in resilience. While Emma maintained her position on the honor roll, she couldn't escape the lingering effects of the scandal. Some teachers still eyed her with suspicion, remembering the headlines about her father's alleged embezzlement from P. Diddy's charity foundation. Whispers followed her down hallways: "That's the pastor's daughter. You know, the one whose dad stole all that money." But Emma found strength in her small circle of loyal friends. Besides Mia, there was Marcus Chen from the debate club, who defended her fiercely against bullies, and Sarah Jenkins, whose mother had overcome addiction through Pastor Thompson's counseling. They created a protective bubble around Emma, sharing lunch at their corner table and walking her to classes. Between classes, Emma would check her phone for updates from the hospital where her mother received treatment. She kept a prayer journal in her locker, adding names and needs throughout the day, a practice her mother had taught her. The pages were filled with everything from Mrs. Rodriguez's son in rehab to Jenny from math parents divorcing. After school, Emma's real work began. She'd head straight to the church's youth center, where she ran a homework help program for younger kids. The center, though showing signs of wear, was a safe haven for many neighborhood children. Emma moved among the rickety tables with patience and grace, helping with math problems while quietly noting which children seemed hungry or wore the same clothes too many days in a row. Her father had taught her to see beyond surface behaviors: the angry teenager throwing chairs might be hiding abuse at home, the quiet kid in the corner could be dealing with hunger. Emma absorbed these lessons, developing an intuition that belied her years. She knew which kids needed a granola bar slipped into their backpack and which ones needed someone to simply sit with them in silence. Evenings were split between hospital visits with her mother and helping at the church. Emma would do her homework in the hospital room, the beeping of machines providing a steady backdrop as she read her textbooks aloud to her mother. Sarah Thompson, even on her worst days, would ask about Emma's day, remembering details about her friends and the youth center kids with remarkable clarity. At night, in their apartment above the church, Emma would often find her father in his study, surrounded by bills and donation letters. She'd bring him tea and sit quietly as he worked, both of them drawing comfort from each other's presence. Sometimes she'd catch him staring at old photos from the Charity Foundation launch with P. Diddy, his expression a mixture of betrayal and bewilderment. Despite everything, Emma never lost her faith or her smile. She faced each day with a quiet determination, finding joy in small victories: a troubled teen attending Sunday service, a child understanding fractions, her mother having enough strength to sit up and talk. Her life was a delicate balance of normal teenage concerns and extraordinary responsibilities, held together by an unshakable belief that God had a purpose for every trial they faced. None of it was easy, but as her mother always said, "The greatest light shines in the darkest places." Emma carried these words with her, a beacon of hope in a world that sometimes seemed determined to extinguish it. Little did she know that her faith would soon be tested in ways she could never have imagined. But the seeds of destruction were planted on a warm spring evening 3 years ago when Sean P. Diddy Combs first walked into St. Michael's Church. The congregation was just finishing their Wednesday night service when the famous figure appeared in the doorway, his presence immediately drawing whispers and stares. But Pastor David Thompson saw something different in the music mogul's eyes, a flicker of genuine searching. That night, long after the congregation had left, Diddy sat in Pastor David's office, sharing a story few had heard. He spoke of his own troubled youth, of violence witnessed and choices regretted. The pastor listened without judgment, offering the same compassion he showed to every lost soul who crossed his threshold. By midnight, tears were streaming down the celebrity's face as he prayed with Pastor David for the first time in decades. What followed seemed like a miracle. Diddy became a regular at St. Michael's, often slipping in quietly for Sunday services. He took a particular interest in the youth programs, seeing in them a chance to prevent others from walking the dark paths he had traveled. The Second Chance Youth Foundation was born from these visits, a multi-million-dollar initiative to expand the church's outreach programs across Brooklyn. Sarah Thompson, though already battling early stages of cancer, threw herself into the foundation's work. She saw how it energized her husband, how it brought hope to more young lives than they'd ever dreamed possible. New programs sprouted: job training centers, counseling services, educational support, and addiction recovery facilities. The local media celebrated the unlikely partnership between the hip-hop mogul and the humble pastor. Emma watched her parents work tirelessly, their small apartment becoming foundation headquarters. She helped organize files, attended meetings, and witnessed her father's eyes light up as he described plans for reaching more troubled youth. Diddy became Uncle Sean to her, bringing gifts and taking a seemingly genuine interest in her life. He even arranged for top specialists to consult on Sarah's cancer treatment. But paradise began crumbling exactly 1 year into the partnership. It started with small discrepancies in the foundation's books, numbers that didn't quite add up, donations that seemed to vanish. Pastor David, handling the financial oversight, noticed patterns that troubled him. When he brought his concerns to Diddy, the response was initially dismissive. "It's probably just accounting errors. Don't worry about it, Pastor D." As David dug deeper, he uncovered layers of financial manipulation. Money meant for youth programs was being diverted through shell companies. Donations disappeared into offshore accounts. Worse, he found evidence that some of the foundation's rehabilitation centers were fronts for more sinister activities. Young people were being exploited rather than helped. The confrontation happened late one night in the church office. Pastor David presented his findings to Diddy, expecting shock, hoping for explanations. Instead, he found himself facing a different man entirely. Gone was the humble seeker of guidance. In his place stood someone whose eyes held no light at all. "You should have stayed in your lane, Pastor P," Diddy had said, his voice carrying an edge that made David's blood run cold. "You help kids with their homework and pray for their souls. Leave the business side to businessmen." When David refused to back down, threatening to take the evidence to authorities, the threat was immediate. "Think about your wife, David. Think about Emma. Some treatments are very expensive. It would be a shame if your insurance suddenly couldn't cover them." But David Thompson hadn't spent decades helping people escape darkness only to succumb to it himself. The next morning he went to the police and the media with his evidence. The response was swift and devastating. Within hours, Diddy's legal team launched a counterattack, presenting doctored documents that painted David as the perpetrator. They claimed he had been embezzling foundation funds, using his position to steal from the very children he claimed to help. The scandal exploded across national media. Pastor preys on troubled youth screamed the headlines. Years of goodwill evaporated overnight. Church members stopped attending services. Parents pulled their children from youth programs. Former supporters publicly denounced the Thompsons. Even fellow pastors distanced themselves, afraid of guilt by association. The final blow came when Sarah's insurance was indeed cancelled, leaving them without coverage for her increasingly expensive treatments. Their savings drained rapidly, forcing them to choose between legal defense and medical care. Through it all, Diddy maintained a public image of betrayed benefactor, expressing deep disappointment in Pastor David's breach of trust. The Thompsons lost almost everything: their reputation, their savings, their support system. But they never lost their faith. Even as their world crumbled, Pastor David continued his ministry, serving whoever still came for help. Sarah, despite worsening health, never spoke ill of their betrayer, choosing instead to pray for his redemption. And Emma watched, learning the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the greatest evil wears the most convincing mask of good. That Friday began like any other in the Thompson household, though the weight of recent events hung heavy in the air. Emma woke early to help her mother prepare for another round of chemotherapy, carefully wrapping Sarah's frail shoulders in her favorite prayer shawl. The morning light filtered through the church's stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across their small kitchen as they shared a quiet breakfast. "I'll come straight to the hospital after school," Emma promised, adjusting her mother's scarf with gentle hands. Sarah's eyes, though tired, sparkled with their usual warmth. "Just be careful on that bike, sweetheart. I've been having strange dreams about you lately." Emma kissed her mother's cheek, dismissing the warning as merely a sick woman's worry. The school day dragged with unusual heaviness. During lunch, Mia noticed Emma's distraction. "Your mom's tests are today, right?" she asked, sharing her sandwich like she always did. Emma nodded, pushing around the food on her tray. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this day, though she couldn't explain why. After final period, Emma rushed to her locker, eager to reach the hospital. The doctors had promised new test results today, maybe. Finally, some good news about her mother's condition. As she pulled out her backpack, a pamphlet fell to the floor. It was from the youth center, featuring a photo of her father with Diddy from Happier Times. Emma quickly crumpled it and threw it away, her heart aching at the reminder of their betrayal. The autumn air was crisp as Emma pedaled her bike through familiar streets. She decided to take the park route. It was longer but quieter, offering a chance to pray and gather her thoughts before facing whatever news awaited at the hospital. The path wound through trees beginning to show their fall colors, their leaves creating a golden canopy overhead. She was crossing the bridge over Henderson Creek when it happened. Later, witnesses would describe seeing a black SUV with tinted windows swerve suddenly onto the bike path. Emma only remembered a flash of dark metal, the screech of tires, and a familiar face behind the wheel just for a split second before everything went sideways. The impact felt like being hit by lightning. Emma's body flew over the handlebars, the world spinning in a kaleidoscope of autumn colors. She heard someone scream. Maybe it was her own voice. She couldn't tell. The concrete rushed up to meet her, and then there was nothing but darkness. In the space between heartbeats, Emma felt herself floating. The pain vanished, replaced by a profound sense of peace. She could see her body below, broken and still on the path, a small crowd already gathering. A jogger was calling 911. Another person was checking for a pulse. But Emma felt detached from it all, as if watching a scene from a movie. The world around her began to shift and change. The park's trees seemed to dissolve into pure light, their leaves becoming particles of golden radiance that swirled around her. The air itself seemed to sing with a harmony she had never heard before, like every hymn ever sung in her father's church distilled into pure feeling. Time lost all meaning. Emma felt herself being drawn upward, toward a brilliance that should have been blinding but somehow wasn't. She could feel presences all around her, beings of pure light that radiated love and peace. They seemed to welcome her, their very essence resonating with the prayers she had whispered throughout her life. But something held her back. Through the growing brightness, she could still hear distant voices from below. The paramedics had arrived. No pulse. Starting compressions. Clear, each word seemed to pull at her, like anchors trying to draw her back to her body. She could feel her mother's prayers, her father's anguish, Mia's tears, all of them reaching across the divide between life and death. Then she saw a darkness that didn't belong in this place of light. A shadow that moved with purpose, taking shape as it approached. Emma felt the peace around her falter, replaced by a cold that seemed to freeze her very soul. The beings of light drew back, their radiance dimming slightly, as a figure emerged from the shadows. She recognized him instantly, though he looked different here. P. Diddy stood before her, but not as the charismatic celebrity who had betrayed her family. Here, stripped of pretense, she saw him for what he truly was. His expensive suit seemed to absorb the light around him, and his smile held no warmth at all. "Well, well," he said, his voice echoing in ways that defied physics. "Look who's crossed over." Too soon he took a step toward her, and Emma felt the entire realm of light shudder. "We need to talk about what you're going to see here, little girl, and about what happens when you go back, if you go back at all." The realm of light stretched endlessly in all directions, a place where colors had depth and meaning beyond earthly understanding. Emma found herself suspended in this divine expanse, surrounded by beings of pure radiance that pulsed with love and purpose. Each one seemed to carry the essence of 1,000 prayers, their light singing with the accumulated faith of generations. The closest being to Emma took shape in a way her human mind could comprehend, not quite an angel as depicted in church windows, but a presence that radiated both authority and infinite compassion. Its voice, when it came, wasn't heard so much as felt, resonating through her very essence. "Child of faith," it said, "you have been chosen to witness what few mortals have seen." Emma tried to speak, but found she had no physical voice here. Instead, her thoughts formed words that rippled through the light. "Am I?" Dead, the being's response came with a gentle wave of reassurance. "Your earthly body lies between breaths, but your journey is far from over. You are here for a purpose greater than yourself." The space around them shifted, and Emma saw visions flowing past like living streams of light, countless acts of kindness, prayers answered, lives transformed through faith. She recognized some of them: her father counseling troubled youth, her mother comforting the grieving, even her own small acts of compassion at school. Each one created ripples of light that spread outward, connecting to countless others. But then the streams began to darken, showing another side of reality. She witnessed shadows creeping into places of light, corrupting acts of charity into tools of manipulation. At the center of many of these darkness stood P. Diddy, but not as she knew him. Here his true nature was exposed, a vessel for something ancient and malevolent, using his earthly influence to twist good intentions into channels for darkness. "Your father was not wrong," the being of light explained, showing Emma scenes from the Foundation's corruption. But what he discovered was merely the surface of a much deeper darkness. The one you know as Sean Combs is part of a greater deception, souls who have chosen to serve powers that oppose all that is light and true. The visions shifted again, revealing more figures like P. Diddy, influential people in entertainment, business, and politics. Each one carried the same shadow within them, working in concert to slowly dim the world's light. "They seek not wealth or fame," the being continued, "but the very essence of faith itself. Every soul they turn toward darkness, every light they extinguish, feeds their power." Emma watched in horror as the pattern became clear: how these forces targeted places of genuine faith and goodness, not to destroy them openly, but to corrupt them from within. Her father's ministry had been just one of many similar operations, chosen because of its authentic power to transform lives. But why show me this? Emma's thought words trembled with the weight of this revelation. I'm just a teenager. What can I do against something so big? The being's response came with a surge of strength that filled her entire being. The greatest light often comes from the most unexpected sources. Your father's faith taught you to see truth, your mother's love taught you to persevere, and your own spirit carries a power you have yet to understand. Before Emma could respond, a cold wind swept through the realm of light. The beings around her drew back as Diddy materialized fully, his presence creating a void in the light itself. Telling tales about me. His voice dripped with mock hurt. That's not very heavenly of you. He moved with casual confidence, but Emma could now see the darkness writhing beneath his smooth exterior. You don't belong here, Emma found herself saying, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. Diddy's laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, but I do. More than you know. This realm isn't as exclusive as it used to be. We found our ways in, haven't we? He gestured around, and Emma saw how the shadows had indeed begun to seep into even this sacred space. The being of light moved between them, its radiance intensifying. You cannot touch her here, it declared. She carries a protection you cannot break. Diddy's smile turned cruel. Perhaps not here, he conceded. But she's going back to our world, isn't she? Back where the rules are. Different. Emma felt a chill despite the surrounding light. The being beside her spoke again, its voice filling her with courage. Remember what you've seen, Emma Thompson. Remember that darkness, no matter how powerful it seems, cannot comprehend or overcome true light. You carry that light within you. Diddy's form began to blur at the edges, his influence in this realm clearly limited. But his parting words carried a threat that cut through the divine peace. See you soon, little girl. We have so much to discuss when you wake up, if you wake up at all. As his presence faded, the beings of light drew closer around Emma, their combined radiance healing the cold void he had left behind. It is time, the first being told her gently. You must return. Your mother's prayers are calling you back, and there is work yet to be done. But how, Emma asked, fear mixing with determination. How can I fight something like that? The being's response filled her with a final surge of divine strength, with truth, with faith, and with the understanding that you never fight alone. The light you've witnessed here lives within every act of genuine love and courage. Remember that, Emma Thompson, when the darkness seems strongest. The beings of light gathered closer around Emma, their radiance intensifying as they prepared her for what was to come. The first being, the one who had been her guide, spoke with renewed urgency. What we show you now must be carried back with you, though powers of darkness will try to make you forget or doubt. The space around them transformed, and Emma witnessed scenes that chilled her soul. She saw how Diddy and others like him had built an intricate web of influence, using their wealth and fame not just for personal gain, but to systematically undermine genuine faith and goodness. The Youth Foundation scandal had been just one small thread in a massive tapestry of corruption. More disturbingly, she saw the true purpose behind their actions. These were not merely corrupt businessmen, but vessels for something darker, ancient forces that fed on destroyed innocence and corrupted faith. Each betrayed trust, each shattered belief, each corrupted soul strengthened their power. Her father's ministry had been targeted precisely because of its authentic ability to transform lives. But why, my mother? Emma asked, watching scenes of her mother's illness. Why did her cancer get so much worse after everything happened? The being's response came with a wave of sorrow. Her illness was exploited, used as leverage to silence your father. They have access to treatments that could help her, but withhold them to maintain their control. The revelation struck Emma like a physical blow. She saw now how carefully orchestrated everything had been: the initial approach to her father, the generous funding, the personal attention to their family. All of it designed to make the betrayal more devastating, to turn a story of faith and redemption into one of corruption and disillusionment. You will face 3 great trials upon your return, the being warned. First, they will try to make you doubt what you've seen here. They will offer logical explanations, suggest it was merely a dream or hallucination. Your challenge will be to hold fast to the truth. Images flashed of doctors, therapists, and others who would try to rationalize her experience away. Second, they will try to silence you through fear. The being showed her glimpses of coming threats, subtle intimidation, mysterious accidents, mounting pressure on her already struggling family. They will make you feel alone and powerless. Remember that you never are. And the third trial, Emma asked, though part of her dreaded the answer. The being's light dimmed slightly. They will offer you everything you want most. Your mother's healing, your father's redemption, your family's restoration, all in exchange for your silence and compliance. Emma saw these temptations play out before her, felt their nearly irresistible pull. "How can I possibly fight this?" she whispered, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she faced. The being's response came with a surge of divine strength. With weapons they cannot comprehend truth, faith, and love. You have been given a gift they cannot take, the ability to see past their masks, to recognize the darkness within them. The being touched her forehead with what felt like a finger of light. When you touch someone with faith in your heart, you will see their true nature. Use this gift wisely, for it will help you gather allies and expose those who serve darkness. But before Emma could ask more questions, Diddy's voice cut through the light again, though he remained unseen. "Giving away all our secrets? That's not very sporting of you." His laughter echoed in ways that defied physics. "Don't worry, little girl. We'll have plenty of time to discuss your new insights." The beings of light drew even closer, forming a protective circle around Emma. "Your time here ends," her guide said urgently. "But remember, darkness cannot comprehend true light. That is both its weakness and your strength. Even in their greatest power, they cannot understand or replicate genuine faith, love, or sacrifice." "When you return," the being continued, "seek out others who carry the light. They are closer than you think, and though they may not have seen what you have seen, they will recognize the truth when you speak it." Emma felt a pulling sensation, like gravity reasserting its claim. The realm of light began to fade around her, but the being's final words branded themselves into her soul. "Remember, Emma Thompson, you have been chosen not because you are the strongest, but because you have the courage to remain faithful in the face of darkness. Your greatest power lies not in what you have seen, but in your willingness to stand for truth no matter the cost." The light exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors, and Emma felt herself falling, racing back toward her body. Diddy's mocking laughter followed her down, but it was drowned out by a chorus of prayers, her mother's, her father's, and countless others rising up to speed her return. She slammed back into her body with the force of a thunderclap, her eyes flying open in the emergency room. The first thing she saw was her mother's tear-stained face, then her father's relieved smile. But beyond them, in the corner of the room, she caught a glimpse of a shadow that shouldn't be there, and knew with chilling certainty that her trials were only beginning. Word count 1,000. The first 3 days in the hospital passed in a blur of medical tests, concerned visitors, and whispered prayers. Emma's room in St. Mary's pediatric ward became a revolving door of doctors amazed by her recovery, nurses checking her vitals, and police officers asking about the hit and run. Through it all, she remained eerily quiet, her eyes constantly scanning the shadows in the corners of her room. Her parents maintained a constant vigil, taking turns between Emma's bedside and Sarah's own chemotherapy treatments 2 floors above. Pastor David had dark circles under his eyes, but his faith remained unshaken. "God brought you back to us," he would say, squeezing Emma's hand. But every time he touched her, Emma saw flashes of his prayers during those 7 minutes' desperate bargains with God, offering his own life in exchange for hers. The first indication that something had fundamentally changed came when Dr. Richardson gripped her wrist to check her pulse. The moment his skin contacted hers, Emma gasped as images flooded her mind. She saw the doctor kneeling in an empty chapel at 3 a.m., praying for guidance after losing a young patient last month. The grief and guilt he carried beneath his professional exterior washed over her like a wave. These visions continued with each new person who touched her. When Nurse Jenny helped her to the bathroom, Emma saw her secret struggles with faith after losing her mother to cancer. When the police officer patted her shoulder, she witnessed his silent prayers for his own daughter struggling with addiction. Each touch revealed the deep spiritual battles people fought beneath their everyday facades. Mia's daily visits became both a comfort and a challenge. Her best friend would bring homework assignments, gossip from school, and her unwavering support. But when they hugged, Emma saw Mia's hidden pain, her parents' fights at home, her own crisis of faith, questioning why God would let bad things happen to good people like the Thompsons. Emma found herself offering comfort to the very friend who came to comfort her. The most difficult moments came during her mother's visits. Sarah Thompson insisted on being wheeled down from her own treatment room, despite her weakness. Every time she stroked Emma's hair or held her hand, Emma saw the full extent of her mother's suffering, not just the physical pain of cancer, but the deep, fierce love that kept her fighting, the countless nights spent praying for her family's protection. But it wasn't all pain and struggle. Sometimes the touches revealed moments of profound grace. Through brief contacts with other patients and visitors, Emma witnessed countless small miracles: recovered addicts helping others find sobriety, former gang members mentoring at-risk youth, cancer survivors offering hope to the newly diagnosed. She began to understand what the beings of light had meant about genuine faith creating ripples of transformation. The darker side of her new ability emerged 5 days after her accident. A hospital administrator came to discuss billing issues with her father. When the man's hand accidentally brushed Emma's during a paper handoff, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Behind his polite smile lurked shadows similar to what she'd seen in P. Diddy. She watched him making late-night calls, conspiring to deny coverage to desperate patients while accepting kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. Emma learned to be careful about who she touched and when. Too many visions left her mentally and emotionally exhausted. She developed subtle ways to avoid casual contact, keeping her hands folded, wearing long sleeves, positioning herself just out of reach. Her father noticed the change but attributed it to trauma from the accident. The most frightening incident came a week into a hospital stay. Past midnight, when the ward was quiet except for the beeping of monitors, Emma woke to find a shadowy figure standing in her doorway. The night nurse, Mrs. Chen, was making her rounds, but something about her movement seemed wrong. When she came to check Emma's IV, her touch revealed horrifying images: Mrs. Chen meeting with P. Diddy in a dark parking garage, accepting an envelope, agreeing to report on Emma's condition and everyone who visited her. Emma managed to maintain her composure until the nurse left, then immediately texted her father, who had gone home to rest. Her message was, "Careful missing you, Dad. Could use some late-night prayer time." It was their new code for urgent but not medical emergency. Within 30 minutes, Pastor David arrived, claiming insomnia had brought him to check on her. Mrs. Chen didn't return for the rest of her shift. The next morning, Emma overheard her father quietly requesting a different night nurse, citing her mother's experience with Mrs. Chen's rough handling during a previous stay. The hospital administration was apologetic and immediately adjusted the schedule. Emma realized that her father, though unaware of her gift, had developed his own intuition about people through years of ministry. As her discharge date approached, Emma began to understand the magnitude of what she faced. Her ability wasn't just a window into others' spiritual struggles, it was a tool for discerning who could be trusted in the coming battle. Each touch revealed whether someone carried genuine light or hidden darkness, whether they were potential allies or disguised enemies. The beings of light had said she would need to gather allies, and now she understood why. The network of darkness P. Diddy represented was vast, with infiltrators everywhere: hospitals, schools, churches, media. But there were also countless points of light, ordinary people whose genuine faith and goodness created barriers against the encroaching shadows. Emma started keeping a journal, coding her observations to look like typical teenage diary entries. Really like Nurse Sarah today, her smile reminds me of Mom's, meant the nurse could be trusted. Mr. Johnson from billing gives me the creeps, marked someone to avoid. She was building a map of light and shadow, preparing for whatever would come next. Emma's return home marked the beginning of a subtle but escalating war. The first sign came in the form of a large fruit basket delivered to their apartment above the church, accompanied by a note expressing P. Diddy's relief at her recovery. When Emma touched the card, she saw flashes of him writing it, smirking as he added drops of something clear and odorless to the fruit. The basket mysteriously fell out the window before anyone could eat from it. The media attention started innocently enough: local news stories about her miraculous recovery, interviews requesting her account of her near-death experience. But Emma noticed how each reporter who touched her while adjusting her microphone or patting her shoulder fell into two distinct categories: those genuinely interested in her story, and those with shadows lurking behind their eyes, trying to discredit her family further. At school, the atmosphere shifted. Students who had shunned her after the foundation scandal suddenly wanted to be her friend, pressing for details about her experience. Through accidental touches in crowded hallways, Emma discovered that some were genuinely drawn to her renewed spirit, while others had been promised rewards by shadowy figures for gathering information about her daily routines. Her father's ministry began experiencing strange occurrences. Anonymous donations would appear, then trigger investigations for money laundering. New families would join the congregation, then spread vicious rumors. Each time Pastor David built something up, invisible hands would work to tear it down. Emma, through careful observation and strategic touches, began identifying the infiltrators, helping her father avoid their traps without revealing how she knew. The most painful attacks targeted her mother's treatment. Sarah Thompson's oncologist suddenly retired, replaced by a new doctor whose touch revealed regular meetings with P. Diddy's associates. Promising treatments were delayed due to insurance complications. Clinical trials that might have helped mysteriously filled up just before Sarah could enroll. Emma's gift became both a blessing and a burden. During youth group meetings, she could identify which teens genuinely needed help and which were planted to cause trouble, but each revelation came with the weight of responsibility. She couldn't simply expose the infiltrators without revealing her ability, yet doing nothing meant watching them hurt people she cared about. Mia remained her strongest ally, though Emma hadn't revealed the full extent of her gift. Together they developed a subtle system of warnings and signals. If Emma touched someone and gave Mia their agreed-upon signal, tucking her hair behind her left ear, Mia would find ways to keep that person away from vulnerable youth group members. The shadows in Emma's life grew darker as autumn deepened into winter. Strange figures appeared outside their apartment at night. Her phone began picking up weird interference during calls. The family car developed mysterious problems. But for every act of intimidation, there seemed to be an answering moment of grace: unexpected help from strangers, timely warnings from new friends, small miracles that couldn't be explained. Most disturbing were the dreams. Every night Diddy appeared in her sleep, his form shifting between his human appearance and something darker. He would offer deals: her mother's complete healing, her father's restored reputation, their family's security. All she had to do was deny what she'd seen in heaven, publicly attribute her experience to trauma and medication. Each time she refused, the offers turned to threats, becoming increasingly specific and frightening. Emma found strength in unexpected places. The homeless man who attended their Sunday services turned out to be a former Special Forces operator, his touch revealing a deep commitment to protecting those who helped him find faith. The quiet librarian who ran their youth reading program had connections throughout the city's social services, helping identify and protect other families being targeted by P. Diddy's network. Through it all, Emma's mother continued to fade, yet her faith burned brighter than ever. Sarah Thompson's hospital room became a gathering place for those fighting similar battles. Emma would sit quietly, watching her mother counsel and comfort others, knowing through brief touches that each interaction spread ripples of genuine light that the darkness couldn't comprehend. Pastor David, though unaware of the full spiritual war unfolding around them, sensed enough to increase security at church events. He installed cameras, changed locks regularly, and started keeping detailed records of every interaction with visitors. Emma saw how it wore on him the constant vigilance, the strain of maintaining faith while protecting his flock. But when she touched his hand during evening prayers, she felt his unwavering conviction that God had a purpose in their trials. The conflict escalated in ways both subtle and overt. Church donations were investigated for money laundering. Child services received anonymous complaints about the youth program. Local news ran stories questioning the church's tax status. Yet for each attack, there seemed to be a counterforce: pro bono lawyers offering help, journalists uncovering inconsistencies in the allegations, community members standing up in support. Emma learned to navigate this complex battlefield with increasing skill. Her journal became a detailed map of allies and enemies, coded in ways only she could understand. She developed an instinct for recognizing the shadow touched even before making contact, noticing patterns in their behavior and energy. More importantly, she learned to recognize genuine light in others, finding hope in how many people carried small flames of real faith within them. The breaking point came 3 months after Emma's accident, on a cold December evening that would change everything. Sarah Thompson's condition had deteriorated rapidly, and the hospital had moved her to intensive care. That same day, Pastor David received notice that the church building was being foreclosed due to financial irregularities. As Emma touched the letter, she saw P. Diddy himself signing the authorization, his dark smile reflecting satisfaction at their imminent destruction. But something unexpected was brewing beneath the surface of their apparent defeat. Through her gift, Emma had been quietly building a network of her own. Every genuine soul she encountered, every person whose touch revealed true faith, became part of an invisible web of resistance. Mrs. Anderson from the hospital cafeteria, whose brush against Emma's hand showed years of quietly slipping extra food to families of sick children. Officer Mike Reynolds, whose accidental touch revealed nights spent protecting churches from vandalism. Even Tommy Chen, the teenage hacker who attended youth group, whose high five exposed his secret crusade against corruption in local government. The first crack in P. Diddy's facade appeared when 3 former Foundation employees contacted Pastor David independently. Each had evidence of the original fraud kept hidden out of fear. Emma, carefully orchestrating accidental contact with each witness, confirmed their sincerity and courage. More importantly, she saw in their memories glimpses of others who might be willing to speak out. Media attention shifted as alternative narratives emerged. A local blogger, whose handshake with Emma revealed a deep commitment to truth, began connecting dots between similar cases across the country. Other religious organizations reported similar patterns of infiltration and destruction. Former associates of P. Diddy started coming forward with stories that echoed the Thompsons' experience. The shadows around them grew darker in response. Emma's school locker was vandalized with threatening messages. Pastor David's car brakes failed suspiciously during a late-night drive. Sarah's medical records mysteriously disappeared, delaying crucial treatments. But each act of intimidation seemed to strengthen the resolve of those standing with them. A pivotal moment came when Emma's gift revealed something unexpected during a hospital visit. As a young nurse adjusted Sarah's IV, Emma's accidental touch showed her to be the daughter of a high-ranking executive in P. Diddy's organization. The nurse had been collecting evidence of her father's involvement in medical insurance fraud for years, waiting for the right moment to expose it. The pieces began falling into place with supernatural precision. Tommy Chen discovered digital trails linking shell companies to blocked medical treatments. Officer Reynolds connected with other police officers investigating similar cases. Mrs. Anderson's network of hospital staff started documenting patterns of suspicious patient care decisions. But P. Diddy's response was swift and fierce. Local news ran smear stories about cult-like behavior at St. Michael's Church. Child Services launched another investigation. Anonymous calls threatened witnesses. But with each attack, more people stepped forward to stand with the Thompsons. Emma's nights were filled with increasingly violent dreams as P. Diddy's influence fought against her growing network of light. In each dream he appeared more desperate, his human facade slipping to reveal the darkness beneath. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, little girl," he would snarl. "This is bigger than you can imagine." But Emma did know, and her understanding was strengthening others. Through careful touches and quiet conversations, she helped people recognize the light within themselves. Each small act of courage, each moment of genuine faith, created ripples that strengthened their collective resistance. The confrontation seemed inevitable when Sarah Thompson's doctors suddenly announced her cancer had spread everywhere, giving her days to live. Emma's touch revealed the diagnosis was fabricated, part of a final effort to break their spirit. But this time, instead of despair, the news ignited something powerful. Through her network, Emma learned of an experimental treatment being suppressed by P. Diddy's pharmaceutical connections, the same treatment that could have helped her mother months ago. The evidence was there, buried in files and hidden testimonies, waiting to be brought to light. As Christmas approached, the tension built to an unbearable pitch. P. Diddy announced a major press conference at his foundation headquarters, promising to address recent controversies. Emma's gift showed her it was meant to be a final, crushing blow to their resistance, a carefully orchestrated event to destroy their credibility completely. But as supporters gathered in secret and evidence was compiled, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced since her time in heaven: absolute certainty. The beings of light had told her darkness couldn't comprehend true faith and love. Now, watching her network of allies grow stronger each day, she understood why. Every person standing with them had chosen light, despite personal cost, creating a power that no amount of money or influence could match. The day of P. Diddy's press conference dawned cold and bright, with fresh snow blanketing New York City in deceptive peace. Emma stood beside her father in the crowded lobby of the foundation headquarters, surrounded by media, supporters, and those whose touches had revealed them as allies. Pastor David didn't know their entire plan, but he knew enough to trust his daughter when she said, "We need to be here today." Sarah Thompson, against all medical advice, insisted on being there too. Wheeled in by Mia's father, she looked frail but determined, her eyes bright with the same faith that had sustained their family through everything. When she gripped Emma's hand, the touch revealed not fear, but an unshakable certainty that God's light would prevail. Diddy's entrance was calculated for maximum effect. Cameras flashed as he strode to the podium, looking immaculate in a designer suit. But when his eyes met Emma's across the crowded room, she saw something flicker behind his practiced smile, a shadow of uncertainty. For the first time, he seemed to realize he wasn't facing a broken teenager, but something he couldn't comprehend. The press conference began with practiced precision. P. Diddy spoke about transparency, accountability, and his deep concern over recent allegations. He presented documentation claiming to prove Pastor David's guilt, unveiled plans to rescue the youth center from mismanagement, and announced a new foundation initiative to restore trust. But this time, the darkness had miscalculated. As P. Diddy reached the crescendo of his speech, doors opened throughout the lobby. People began streaming in, former foundation employees, families from the youth center, medical professionals, and local business owners. Each carried evidence of the true corruption, documented meticulously over months. Tommy Chen's hacked emails projected onto the presentation screen, revealing the systematic suppression of Sarah's treatment options. Officer Reynolds and his team moved to secure exits as witnesses began speaking out. The nurse, who was the executive's daughter, stepped forward with years of documented fraud. One by one, the voices P. Diddy had tried to silence rose in testimony. Enough P. Diddy's voice carried an inhuman edge as he realized control was slipping away. He moved toward Emma with dangerous intent, but found his path blocked by Pastor David. For a moment, father and daughter stood together, facing the man who had tried to destroy them. "You think this changes anything, P?" Diddy snarled, his carefully maintained facade cracking. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. I am just one piece of something you can't possibly fight." The temperature in the room plummeted as shadows began gathering around him, visible now to everyone. Emma stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "You're wrong. We know exactly what we're fighting." She reached out and touched his hand before he could pull away. The contact sent a surge of pure light through the room, forcing the shadows within him into plain view. Gasps filled the lobby as P. Diddy's true nature became visible to all. The darkness writhed around him, trying to maintain its hold, but Emma held firm. Every genuine prayer, every act of true faith, every moment of real love she had witnessed through her gift became a weapon of light. "Darkness can't comprehend real light," Emma declared, echoing the words from heaven. "It can copy everything except genuine faith and love. That's why you'll never win." As she spoke, others began moving forward, Sarah Thompson raising her hands in prayer, Pastor David placing a hand on her shoulder, Mia gripping her other hand. Each touch added to the light flowing through her. P. Diddy fought back with everything he had. Shadows lashed out, computers crashed, lights flickered, but with each attack more people pressed forward, their collective faith creating a force he couldn't fight. The darkness within him began to fragment, its hold weakening. In a final, desperate move, P. Diddy threw all his influence and power into one last offer. "I can save your mother," he hissed, "right now. Complete healing. Just let this go for a moment." Emma hesitated, her heart aching. Then she felt her mother's hand join the others on her shoulder. "Some prices are too high," Sarah Thompson said softly. "And some truths must be told, no matter the cost." The love in her voice, the pure faith behind it, became the final key. Light exploded through the room and P. Diddy fell to his knees, the darkness pouring out of him like smoke in a wind. When it was over, he knelt there looking smaller, older, and utterly human. The shadows were gone, leaving behind a man who had lost his way long ago. As police moved in and reporters rushed forward with questions, Emma felt a familiar warmth, the same peace she had known in heaven. The beings of light had been right. In the end, darkness couldn't stand against genuine faith and love. Not because they were weak, but because they were the most powerful forces in existence, the very essence of light itself. Victory, Emma learned, came with its own kind of pain. In the days following P. Diddy's exposure, their lives became a whirlwind of police statements, media interviews, and legal proceedings. But beneath the public vindication, private battles still raged. Sarah Thompson's condition continued to deteriorate, her body too weakened by months of delayed treatment to respond to the therapies now suddenly available. The hospital room became their new church, with Pastor David conducting quiet services from beside his wife's bed. Emma watched her father struggle to maintain his faith as he divided his time between rebuilding their ministry and supporting his dying wife. His hair had gone completely gray, and his shoulders carried a weight that no public victory could lift. Late at night, when she thought everyone was sleeping, Emma would hear her father's muffled sobs through the hospital chapel walls. His prayers had changed from asking for healing to begging for more time, just a few more days with the woman he loved. When Emma accidentally brushed against him during these moments, his touch revealed a man wrestling with questions no pastor was supposed to ask. Why hadn't God protected them sooner? Why did victory over darkness require such a devastating price? The youth center, though saved, lay half empty. Many families, despite seeing the truth about P. Diddy, remained hesitant to return. Years of doubt and suspicion had left deep scars in the community. Emma felt each absence like a physical pain, especially when she passed the art room where her mother used to teach Sunday school, now silent and dark. Mia stuck by her side through everything, but even their friendship carried new burdens. Emma's gift showed her how deeply her best friend was affected by it all: the nightmares, the guilt over not believing the Thompsons sooner, the fear that still lingered. Mia's touch revealed sleepless nights spent questioning everything she thought she knew about good and evil, faith and doubt. The hardest moments came during Sarah's lucid periods, when she would gather her remaining strength to counsel those still coming to her for guidance. Emma witnessed her mother pushing through excruciating pain to offer comfort to others, each act of kindness costing her precious energy. Through brief touches, Emma felt how every word of encouragement, every shared prayer, every gentle smile drained her mother's failing reserves. Financial pressures mounted despite the church's restored reputation. Medical bills had accumulated beyond anything they could manage, and legal fees from fighting the false charges had depleted their savings. Pastor David started selling his books, his car, anything they could spare. Emma overheard him one night discussing the possibility of selling their apartment above the church to pay for Sarah's care. The experimental treatment that could have saved her mother months ago was now a cruel reminder of what might have been. Though P. Diddy's network no longer blocked access to it, Sarah's cancer had spread too far. Each doctor's touch confirmed what they feared: they had won the battle, but time had run out. Emma's gift, once a source of strength, became almost unbearable. Every touch brought new awareness of the pain around her: the nurse's silent prayers for Sarah, the doctor's frustration at being unable to help, the profound grief in her father's heart. She began wearing gloves, unable to bear the constant flood of others' suffering. One evening, as snow fell softly outside the hospital window, Sarah called Emma to her bedside. "I need you to promise me something," she whispered, her voice thin but determined. When their hands met, Emma felt her mother's complete awareness of the cost of their victory and her absolute certainty that it had been worth it. "Promise me you won't let this make you bitter. Promise me you'll keep seeing the light in others." The beings of light had warned her about trials, but they hadn't mentioned this kind of pain: the agony of winning the war, but losing something irreplaceable in the process. Faith, Emma was learning, sometimes meant continuing to believe in the light even when darkness seemed to have taken everything. The night Sarah Thompson died, the stars seemed to fade from the sky. Emma sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding a hand that was growing colder by the minute, experiencing a different kind of near-death vision. Through their final touch, she witnessed every prayer her mother had ever said for her, every dream she'd held, every moment of faith that had shaped their lives. "I love you, baby girl," Sarah whispered, her last words carrying both blessing and burden. "The light. It's so beautiful." Then she was gone, leaving Emma with one final vision of pure radiance that matched what she'd seen in heaven. But this time, instead of comfort, the memory of that divine light brought only pain. The following days blurred into a nightmare of funeral arrangements and condolence calls. Emma watched her father move through it all like a sleepwalker, mechanically shaking hands and accepting sympathy while his faith endured its greatest test. His sermons, once filled with passionate certainty, became quiet meditations on grief and doubt. The darkness that had fled from P. Diddy seemed to find new ways to torment them. Though he was gone, his influence had left lasting shadows. Insurance companies still delayed payments, citing ongoing investigations, but former congregation members whispered that Sarah's death was divine punishment for the family's pride in challenging powerful forces. Some even suggested that Emma's near-death experience had been a demonic deception rather than divine intervention. At school, Emma became known as the girl who sees things a label that isolated her further. Students avoided her touch, fearing she would read their secrets. Teachers watched her with concern, suggesting grief counseling and medication. Even Mia struggled to understand when Emma tried to explain how each casual touch now brought overwhelming waves of others' pain and fear. The youth center, though slowly rebuilding, felt haunted by memories. Every room held echoes of Sarah's presence, her handwriting on old lesson plans, her favorite hymn books, the children's artwork she had carefully preserved. Emma couldn't enter the building without her gift showing her glimpses of happier times, each memory a fresh wound. Night brought the worst trials. In her dreams, Emma returned to the realm of light, but now it felt distant and accusatory. Where was this divine power when her mother needed it most? The beings of light offered no answers, and Emma woke each time with tears freezing on her pillow. Pastor David's crisis of faith manifested in silent hours spent staring at Sarah's photo, his Bible untouched beside him. When Emma accidentally brushed against him during breakfast, his touch revealed thoughts he would never speak aloud, questions about whether their victory had been worth the cost, doubts about the God he had served so faithfully. The gift that had helped them expose darkness now seemed more curse than blessing. Emma began wearing multiple layers of clothing, avoiding physical contact at all costs. Each touch brought new burdens: other people's grief, their hidden doubts, their struggles with faith. The weight of knowing so much about others' pain while able to heal her own became almost unbearable. One particularly dark night, Emma found herself in the church sanctuary, raging at the God who had given her this gift, but hadn't saved her mother. "Why show me all this light if darkness still wins?" she screamed into the empty church. The stained glass windows reflected her tears in fragments of color, offering no answer to her pain. It was in this moment of deepest doubt that Emma began to understand what the beings of light had meant about true faith. Perhaps this darkness, this valley of grief and questioning, was itself a kind of test. Not of her ability to fight external evil, but of her capacity to keep believing in light even when it seemed most absent. As dawn broke through the church windows, Emma sat in her mother's favorite pew, physically and spiritually exhausted. She had no answers, no divine revelations, no miraculous comfort, but something in her refused to let go of what she had seen both in heaven and in her mother's final moments. The light existed, whether she could feel it right now or not. The turning point came unexpectedly, 3 months after Sarah's death, when Emma finally forced herself to sort through her mother's belongings. In a worn leather journal hidden at the bottom of a drawer, she found something that changed everything. The moment her fingers touched the cover, a flood of visions overwhelmed her, not just her mother's memories, but a carefully documented trail of evidence that Sarah Thompson had been gathering for years. Through her mother's written words and the memories contained in each page, Emma discovered that Sarah had known about P. Diddy's true nature long before he approached their church. As a hospital volunteer, she had noticed patterns in patient care that troubled her: promising treatments mysteriously withdrawn, specific doctors suddenly transferred, certain patients' files going missing. When Diddy appeared at their church, Sarah had recognized his name from hospital board documents. The journal revealed that Sarah's cancer diagnosis had come just as she was beginning to connect the dots. Page after page detailed her quiet investigation: names, dates, patterns of corruption that stretched far beyond their small church. Emma's touch revealed her mother's growing understanding that her illness was being manipulated, used as a weapon to control their family. Most shocking was the revelation that Sarah had chosen to continue fighting even when offered treatment in exchange for silence. "Some prices are too high," she had written. "If my suffering can help expose this darkness, perhaps that is my final ministry." The words blurred through Emma's tears as she realized the full weight of her mother's sacrifice. The journal led Emma to a hidden USB drive containing years of documented evidence. Tommy Chen, their young hacker friend, helped decrypt its contents, revealing a network of corruption far more extensive than they had imagined. Diddy had been just one player in a system designed to profit from suffering while destroying genuine faith and hope. Sarah's investigations had uncovered connections between supposedly separate incidents: other churches targeted, other families broken, other lives manipulated. She had been building a case not just against P. Diddy, but against an entire network of darkness that used wealth and influence to corrupt institutions meant to help people. Through her mother's recorded observations, Emma began to understand why their family had been chosen for destruction. It wasn't just about silencing one pastor or corrupting one ministry. They had been targeted because genuine faith, expressed through real acts of love and service, posed a fundamental threat to those who profited from despair. The most powerful revelation came in Sarah's final letter to Emma, sealed in an envelope marked "When you're ready to understand." The moment Emma touched it, she experienced her mother's complete awareness of what was at stake. Sarah had known that her death might be necessary to expose the truth, and she had accepted that cost with clear-eyed faith. My darling girl. The letter began, "If you're reading this, then the gift you received in heaven has shown you everything. Your near-death experience wasn't an accident, it was an answer to my prayers. I asked God to give you the ability to see truth, knowing it would come at great cost. Forgive me for this burden. But know that your gift is not a curse. It's a light that darkness cannot comprehend or defeat." Pastor David, when shown the evidence, wept not just with grief but with understanding. His wife had been fighting her own battle all along, turning her suffering into a weapon against darkness. Through Emma's gift, he felt Sarah's unwavering faith in their family's mission and her certainty that love would ultimately triumph. The local news station that had once vilified them now worked to verify and publish Sarah's findings. As the story broke, others began coming forward with collaborating evidence. Emma's gift confirmed each testimony, building a picture of systematic corruption that could no longer be ignored or hidden. Sarah Thompson, in death as in life, had found a way to serve others. Her careful documentation, combined with Emma's ability to verify truth through touch, created an unassailable case against those who had thought themselves untouchable. Justice arrived like a spring tide, unstoppable and cleansing. As Sarah Thompson's evidence spread through media channels, the carefully constructed facades began crumbling. Federal investigators descended on corporate offices, armed with documentation that had been waiting for years in Sarah's hidden files. Hospital administrators were led away in handcuffs, insurance executives faced grand juries, and charitable foundations underwent forensic audits. P. Diddy, already stripped of his spiritual corruption, now faced the earthly consequences of his actions. In a surprising turn, he asked to meet with Emma and Pastor David before entering his guilty plea. In the prison visiting room, Emma's touch revealed something unexpected: genuine remorse. The darkness that had possessed him was gone, leaving behind a man grappling with the weight of his choices. "Your mother," he said, his voice breaking, "she tried to save me long before any of this happened. She saw what I was becoming and offered help instead of judgment. I didn't understand until now what real faith looks like." Through their contact, Emma witnessed his slow journey toward redemption, beginning with a full confession that helped prosecute others in his network. The hospital board was restructured, with Sarah's documented cases leading to sweeping reforms in patient care. The experimental treatment she had been denied was made available to others, funded by seized assets from corrupted administrators. Lives began to be saved because of evidence she had gathered at the cost of her own. Pastor David found new strength in his wife's legacy. The discovery of her secret battle helped restore his faith, not in easy answers, but in the power of persistent love. His sermons changed, speaking now from a place of hard-won wisdom about how light works in the darkest places. The congregation grew, drawn by his authentic wrestling with grief and grace. Emma's gift evolved from a burden into a tool for healing. As the truth about their family's story spread, people began coming to her not to be exposed, but to be understood. Through careful touches, she helped connect those who had been similarly victimized, creating a network of support and recovery. Each person's story contributed to the larger picture of healing and justice. The youth center flourished in unexpected ways. Young people who had witnessed the power of truth over corruption were inspired to create their own programs for community change. The art room where Sarah had taught was transformed into a counseling center where Emma and others helped families heal from similar experiences of betrayal and loss. Perhaps the most profound redemption came through the changed lives of those who had once worked for darkness. Junior executives, minor officials, and lower-level conspirators came forward with their own confessions, many citing Sarah Thompson's example of sacrificial courage. Emma's gift confirmed their sincerity, helping guide them toward restitution rather than mere punishment. Local churches that had abandoned them during the scandal now sought reconciliation. Emma felt their genuine remorse through handshakes and hugs, understanding that fear rather than malice had driven their actions. Pastor David welcomed them back with the same grace his wife had shown to others, turning potential division into an opportunity for community healing. The final piece of justice came in the form of a large settlement from the disbanded corruption network's assets. The Thompsons established the Sarah Thompson Memorial Foundation, dedicated to supporting families facing similar battles against systemic corruption. The foundation's first act was to create a medical advocacy program, ensuring no other family would have to choose between truth and treatment. Through it all, Emma kept her mother's journal close, drawing strength from the written words and the memories they contained. Her gift showed her how each small victory created ripples of light, just as the beings in heaven had described. Sarah's sacrifice had not just exposed darkness, it had created a pathway for others to find their way back to light. 1 year after Sarah's death, at the Foundation's launch ceremony, Emma stood before a crowd of supporters and survivors. As she touched the podium her mother had once used to teach Sunday school, she felt a familiar warmth, not the searing light of divine revelation, but the gentle glow of truth winning out over darkness, one heart at a time. 2 years to the day after Sarah Thompson's passing, St. Michael's Church hosted a celebration of life that was both an ending and a beginning. The sanctuary overflowed with people whose lives had been touched by the Thompson family's journey, survivors of corruption, reformed conspirators, faithful supporters, and new believers drawn by their story of perseverance. Pastor David, his hair now completely silver but his eyes bright with renewed purpose, stood at the pulpit where he had once questioned God's plan. "My wife believed that light shines brightest in the darkest places," he said, his voice strong and clear. "She taught us that true faith isn't about avoiding darkness, but about carrying light through it." Emma, now 16, sat in the front pew where she had once raged against divine purpose. Her gift had matured into something deeper than mere revelation. Through careful touches, she now helped guide others toward healing and truth. The gloves she had worn in grief were replaced by hands ready to offer comfort and understanding. The Sarah Thompson Memorial Foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams. What started as a small medical advocacy program now operated across the country, helping families fight systemic corruption while supporting their practical needs. Each success story carried echoes of Sarah's original sacrifice, creating ripples of change that continued to spread. P. Diddy's network had been fully dismantled, its resources redirected toward healing the damage it had caused. From prison, he continued to assist investigations, his own transformation becoming a powerful testimony to the possibility of redemption. His case became a blueprint for exposing similar operations, leading to reforms in healthcare, charity oversight, and corporate accountability. The youth center thrived under new leadership that combined practical help with spiritual guidance. Young people who had witnessed the power of persistent faith now led programs teaching others to recognize and resist corruption. The art room where Sarah had once taught became a sanctuary for healing, its walls covered with expressions of hope and renewal. Most remarkably, the church had become a center for reconciliation. Former opponents, those who had once shunned the Thompsons found grace and forgiveness. Emma's gift confirmed the authenticity of their change, showing her how genuine repentance created its own kind of light. On this anniversary, as sunshine streamed through the stained glass windows Sarah had loved, Emma felt a familiar warmth, not the searing light of heavenly revelation, but the steady glow of truth lived out in love. Her mother's final prayer had been answered. The light had not only exposed darkness but had transformed it, creating spaces where healing could flourish. Pastor David ended the service by unveiling a simple plaque beside the pulpit. It bore Sarah's favorite Bible verse and the words that had become their family's legacy: "Some prices are too high, but no sacrifice made in love is ever wasted." Emma touched the plaque, and through it felt the completion of a circle from death to life, from darkness to light, from loss to restoration. At 17, Emma stood before a packed auditorium at a national faith conference, her story now a beacon of hope for others facing similar battles. "Light doesn't always come as a blinding revelation," she told the crowd. "Sometimes it's as quiet as a mother's sacrifice, as steady as a father's faith, as simple as refusing to let darkness have the final word." Her gift remained, but had evolved into something more nuanced than simple truth detection. Through purposeful touches, she helped people reconnect with their own capacity for faith and love. The beings of light had been right. Darkness couldn't comprehend these forces, but more importantly, it couldn't prevent them from spreading once ignited. Pastor David had remarried the previous spring to Margaret, a widow whose touch revealed to Emma a heart as genuine as her mother's. Together they expanded St. Michael's ministry, focusing on helping families navigate complex battles against systemic corruption while maintaining their faith. Sarah's story became part of their teaching, demonstrating how personal sacrifice could fuel lasting change. The Sarah Thompson Memorial Foundation launched its newest initiative, a nationwide network of advocacy centers combining legal support, medical assistance, and spiritual guidance. Each center displayed Sarah's journal in a glass case, its pages testimony to how one person's dedicated truth-seeking could illuminate paths for others. P. Diddy, now eligible for parole, had become a powerful voice for reform from within prison. His regular letters to the Thompsons, which Emma's gift confirmed as deeply sincere, detailed his ongoing work helping authorities identify and dismantle similar corruption networks. His transformation stood as proof that even the darkest hearts could be renewed by persistent light. Mia, now studying investigative journalism, worked alongside Emma documenting stories of other families fighting similar battles. Together they created a documentary series titled Lightbearers, highlighting how ordinary people's choices to stand for truth, despite personal cost, created ripples of positive change. On clear nights, Emma still visited the church sanctuary, sitting in her mother's favorite spot. But now, instead of grief and questioning, she felt peace. The light she had seen in heaven was indeed real, but it manifested most powerfully through simple human acts of faith, love, and courage. Mum always said that faith isn't about waiting for God to fix everything. Emma often told those who sought her help, it's about choosing to carry light even when darkness seems to be winning. Because darkness, no matter how powerful it appears, cannot understand or overcome genuine love. As she looked toward her own future, Emma knew her journey with the gift would continue evolving. But her mother's legacy had taught her its true purpose, not just to expose darkness, but to help others find their own light within. After all, as Sarah Thompson had written in her final journal entry, in the end, it's not about defeating darkness. It's about creating so much light that darkness has nowhere left to hide. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story of faith, love, and redemption. We value your thoughts and experiences. Please share your perspective in the comments below. Has your faith ever been tested in similar ways? How did you find light in dark times? If you found meaning in Emma's journey, please support our team by subscribing to the channel. Your subscription helps us continue creating content that inspires and uplifts. Don't forget to like this video and share it with friends and family who might need this message of hope. Together, we can spread light and create positive change, one story at a time. Thank you for being part of our community.